There is a myth that on July the 4th, 1776, George III of Great Britain recorded in his diary, "Nothing of importance happened today." It's a myth, but it's a great story. And so I will lead off today's podcast by saying nothing of importance happened yesterday. Happy politics. My name is Maclean K. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Orca, and I'm joined in a socially distant manner by...
You'll be back. It's Jordan Bateman, ICBA, Vice President Communications, blah, blah, blah. Maclean, Groundhog Day election, here we are.
Yeah, I mean,
what was the point?
I don't even know where to begin. It's the House of Commons is going to look astonishingly similar to what it did a month ago. There are a few changes here, there, but I mean, the overall picture is almost exactly the same. Whoever it was on Twitter that called this the Control-C, Control-V election, my hat is off to you, because that's exactly what it is. I retweeted it, so I didn't steal it. That's a fair steal. How do you want to talk about this, about last night's? Do you want to go through the parties from top to bottom, or do you want to do big impressions, or where is your heart and your head leading you this morning, Jordan?
Well, I don't know. I mean, let's focus on British Columbia. I have like 9 things from BC that I kind of want to talk about. So maybe that's the way to go. And some of them are related to certain leaders and whatnot. But by the way, Control-C, Control-V election, my other favorite stat was Liberal partisans being excited because they took 7 ridings from the Conservatives, and Conservative partisans being excited because they took 7 ridings from the Liberals. Like, we're a very fair, equitable country. That's all I can say.
Yeah, no, it's like one of those trades in the NHL where each of them sort of give each other their problem third-line wingers on the hopes that a change of scenery will do them some good.
Exactly.
That's kind of what happened last night. All right, so what is your top observation or the first point you want to make from a BC perspective?
Okay, well, let us talk about the Conservatives.
Yes.
And I would propose to you, Mr. K, that fiscal responsibility, especially linked to affordability, is the path to victory for the Conservatives, not, hardcore social conservative values. That to me seems like the way to go. It was hard for many fiscal conservatives to vote for this plan that was costed at $25 billion more than the free spending Liberal plan. And all I can say is, by God, is that Pierre Poilievre's music? I fear for Aaron O'Toole. I was on a call this morning with some folks from across the country, and they're very bullish. No, O'Toole will hang on. It'll be great, and he'll be better the second time around. I don't know. When you try to shift a party's values that far, a la the clone speech, it doesn't usually work out well for the leader involved.
So you're saying you think that Aaron O'Toole's days as the leader are numbered. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I'm getting from this.
I just think that if Pierre Poilievre had been in the race last time, he would have won. And I get the sense among caucus that he's the direction they want to go. So I guess it's kind of up to him. If he decides he wants to do it, then they'll pull the ripcord. If not, then maybe O'Toole hangs on. It's really kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation when it comes to the social conservatives within the Conservative Party. Because, there can be no doubt that Aaron O'Toole, by being pro-choice and some of his more centrist policies, probably cost the Conservatives, cost the Conservatives Richmond. And also probably Richmond Hill in Ontario, by the way, because it alienated Chinese Christians. So, okay, there's that point of view. On the other hand, you have Tamara Jansen, who is running in Cloverdale Langley City, and maybe one of the most ardent social conservatives in the country, certainly as an MP. Brought up conversion therapy, went to California to protest abortion. Like, this is a hardcore social conservative, and I live in Langley, not in her riding, but nearby. I've seen the Facebook groups churn for 2 years as people got ready to vote her out. And in a rare case where the local candidate mattered, she lost by 3 points to the Liberal. So, in a riding that would generally be, fairly safe territory, has been for the Conservatives over the time. Derek Sloan got blown out in Alberta. So you kind of start adding this all together, right? Like, okay, so, doing this costs you Richmond Center, But then, Tamara Jansen was as socially conservative as they come, and she didn't hold on to her seat. So what do you do?
I mean, you're right. It's a tough balance to strike for that party. On Aaron O'Toole, I mean, you watched the speech, I presume, last night. That certainly does not sound like a man who is even entertaining thoughts of going elsewhere. I would have thought that, I mean, he's been leader for what now? A year? 2? No, not 2 years. A year. And so to me, it seems like he would be a 2-election strategy, what he's trying to do, whether you think it's good or not. We're likely, I also think he's right. We're likely to be doing this again in 18 months to 2 years. Yeah. And the one thing the Conservatives don't want is to be like one of those NFL teams. I'm going to do a sports analogy again. I apologize in advance, Jillian, but one of those teams that has like a new coach every year and it's just a churn. And so that becomes what people expect. So I think stability is underrated. So I don't think it would be wise to remove him yet. But I mean, it obviously didn't work. We knew the results of last night's election, I think sometime yesterday morning, when it emerged from the Conservative camp that they would have viewed a Liberal minority as a win. I mean, at that point, we should have said, oh, well, okay, well, obviously that's what their polls are telling them is going to happen. And indeed, it is what happened.
Yeah, look, I think it'll depend on the caucus.
Yeah.
Now, if the caucus sits there and says, I got elected my riding in spite of Aaron O'Toole, then he's in trouble. If they say I got elected because of Aaron O'Toole, he won't be. And it will also come down to how seriously do the Conservatives feel, like, does that caucus feel like they were winning this election 2 weeks into the campaign? Because that changes
And they might.
And they may. I'm not sure they were. Like, their vote was pretty close to what it ended up being. And it was really the Liberals who had bled more to Jagmeet Singh in those early days because the Liberal launch was so terrible. But and the media will say, well, it's because of the guns and whatnot, blah blah blah. And the gun policy was stupid of O'Toole. There's no doubt about it. But that will be what churns in caucus. And if he can't, look around caucus and feel like 80% of them are on his side and support his leadership, he's going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I guess the next couple months will be key. We'll see what'll happen here. I mean, I guess 2 years ago, we were having the similar conversation about Andrew Scheer. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? And I mean, Andrew Scheer added 26 seats, I think 26. And so, yeah, there is, if that's and
remember, Scheer had that little scandal, but some sort of scandal, like, something I can't remember the details of it, but that came after, and that really finished the job. So is there such a thing? Is Aaron O'Toole? I suspect he's probably learned from that, so maybe not. But can we talk about the one leader who we know is out?
Yes, please do.
Maclean, I'm going to submit a controversial theory to you about Anna Paul. I'm going to whisper it. I'm going to whisper it because I'm not sure I'm sold on this theory, but. What if they were right and she really wasn't very good at politics?
Well, choosing the riding she did is, I mean, it's not even that she lost. It's that she finished a fourth and a rather distant fourth. I think it was 9% in her own riding. Yeah. You and I have had conversations before about leadership candidates in party races. And you said something to the effect of, listen, if you can't win your own riding, then you can't win the leadership of the party. That's just a basic elementary step. And I think you're right. And for what other Anna Paul's other strengths, and she did perform well in the debates and things like that, getting drubbed in your own riding is just, it's hard to recover from that. What is it you're going to do at this point? You can't win in Toronto, and that's where you've bet all of your pennies on winning. I don't think anyone can win in Toronto that's not a Liberal, and for another couple of elections. She should have, parachuted into Sydney and told Elizabeth May, hey, Justin Trudeau's going to make you a senator, which doesn't have to work for long. It just has to work for 5 minutes for Elizabeth May to resign her seat. Yeah. But you're right. They finished behind the People's Party. Mm-hmm. Rob Shaw has a piece that just went up on the Orca looking at how the Greens, just got absolutely hammered across BC. Yep. Even in ridings like that overlap with Sonia Furstenau's riding in Cowichan Valley, where the vote share just cratered. And so The way Rob put it is the message from voters to the Greens is, get your shit together or go away.
Yeah. Well, just go away, I think, is the actual message. Now, in fairness to Annamie Paul, I mean, in her local riding, she did outperform the national Green vote by 3.5 times. So
that's mighty spin. That's really good. It's
Okay.
There's no way she survives. I think we can agree on that.
Okay, so let's shift to the NDP. Only the NDP celebrate these kind of crushing defeats like this. A net gain of 1 seat had Jagmeet Singh dancing on stage. Like, I have never understood the mentality of an NDPer who celebrates these kind of losses. They went from 24 seats to 25 seats. This was no breakthrough.
Is it down to 25? I thought I had it was at 28 or something like that. And they are, I think they are likely to get 1 or 2 more with mail-ins and some of the really, really close ones. Like I can absolutely see them taking Vancouver Granville or the Nanaimo seat, Nanaimo Ladysmith, because they are probably going to do well in the mail-ins. But again, we're talking about, okay, so maybe 30, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, great. Are you dancing on stage?
Yeah. It's, it's interesting. I'm seeing some rumblings on Twitter from people who are not happy, NDP supporters, saying, look, it's not working. Because we heard all through this election, people on the NDP team tut-tutting, don't make fun of the TikTok videos. We're reaching out to a new demographic, and you making fun of it just dates yourself. Like, okay, but it didn't work again. Yeah. It didn't work. The vote sweep just didn't happen. There is no Jagmentum. Jagmeet Singh is in a very interesting position in that everyone agrees he's popular, and people seem to like him. But that's not the trick. The trick is getting people to vote for you. Justin Trudeau has the opposite problem. It's people don't seem to like him anymore, but they voted for him. Enough people to make him the prime minister again. Which problem would you rather have?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, right? Because, I mean, they did increase their popular vote from 16% to 17.7%. I mean, that's a 10% increase, right? But you're so far out of it. I mean, now you're basically surfing at half of what the CPC has. That's just not good enough. And,
And it's not just that. I know you want to focus on BC, but the NDP were targeting a bunch of urban ridings across Canada. Halifax, Toronto, I think Montreal, and they just, none of them materialized, not one.
Yeah, no, exactly. So
with the exception of Edmonton, I should say.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. So, yeah, I'm ever perplexed by the NDP view of the world and the orange tinge lens that they see it through. So I'm not sure what to say about that. I'd like to talk about a race that I was watching very closely, and I think bodes poorly for the Conservative movement. And this was Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam. And there was an incumbent there, a no-name Liberal incumbent named Ron McKinnon. Kudos to you if you've ever heard of Ron McKinnon before I just said his name, because I certainly hadn't. But the CPC had a Chamber of Commerce executive director, someone very involved in like all those typical things that you talk about when you dream up a great candidate for a suburban seat. Katerina I'm going to butcher her last name. Anastasiadis. It's great social media profile, smart candidate, has worked in the party, has worked in volunteer efforts, is on the board, I think, of Covenant House, like checks just like the perfect boxes that you want. They put a lot of time and energy and resources, I think, into that riding, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, which is not a favorable riding to them, and they still lost by 8 points. And, that highlights probably to me the issues in the suburbs more than anything else. I mean, wasn't that long ago that James Moore had a lockdown? He was Coquitlam, Port Moody, but, it wasn't that long ago that we had a presence there in the Tri-Cities. We don't anymore. That's a big concern. If a candidate like Katerina can't win there, then we got to reassess the messaging and ask, what is it about Aaron O'Toole and Andrew Scheer before that is not resonating in that suburb?
Yeah, I mean, the Conservatives seem to have, I don't want to say conceded because that's not what I mean, but they seem to have, there's an implicit understanding they will not be competitive in the major centers, the downtowns is what I'm saying. But the trade-off would be there's actually more votes in the suburbs. And so it's in an Ontario context, it's not 416, it's 905. And in BC, it's not downtown Vancouver, it's the Tri-Cities, it's Burnaby, it's Richmond, all those places. But you're right in that those suburbs did not go conservative, especially in BC. And so you're right to notice that and to sort of raise an eyebrow and wonder what's if that's a trend or a blip, or if this election is just 2 years after the last one and it's during a pandemic and so there's a bit of an asterisk, or if a bit of all of the above.
Yeah, no, exactly. You mentioned Vancouver Granville.
Yep.
The last time I checked, it had flipped all night. Flipped?
Because he flips houses.
Because he flips houses.
No one made that joke last night.
Oh, that's hurtful. I was watching the Packers game for most of last night, and kudos to Aaron Rodgers and the 2021 Green Bay Packers for pulling themselves off the mat.
That's like 3 times we've lost Jillian Stead.
That's right. Vancouver Granville flipped all night. So Talib Noor Mohammed of the Liberals, last time I checked, he was leading Anjali Appaduri by the NDP by 230 votes. Mm-hmm. I would like to propose something to you, Maclean. You're a former staffer in a federal Liberal Prime Minister's office.
That's true.
Would it be better for Trudeau just to lose that seat and lose that guy rather than have to deal with the house flipping stuff every time he talks about affordability?
He's going to be wearing it anyway, because he was the candidate. I don't think you get it any less if he's the MP. He's not going to be the minister, unlike the Liberal who won in Calgary, who can be whatever he wants.
Yeah.
But no, if Talib Noor Mohammed wins and it becomes the MP for Vancouver Granville, I think he can look forward to a couple years of quietly sitting on the backbench and being kept very far away from these kinds of issues. But I think, yes, they would still take the seat. If they're declaring, put it this way, Jordan, if they're declaring last night as a decisive mandate from the Canadian people with 31% of the vote and still a minority government, they'll just take the seat. They're fine with that.
Fair enough. Okay, Surrey Newton.
Yes.
Here we go. Surrey Newton used to be like a real bellwether riding.
Yes.
Held by such notables as Gurmont Grewal for the CPC, or for the Tories at the time, and Ginny Sims for the NDP. I mean, we're talking some of the brightest lights in Canadian politics in Surrey Newton. Now, really, Suk Dhaliwal has cemented it. And between Suk's organization and experience and a little bit of redistribution, which helped him as well, what was once a 3-way race riding is now firmly Suk's riding, 54%. He doubled the dipper. But that is a sign as to how that is, an example of a piece of real estate that's gone from the other two parties. That is Suk's territory until he retires. It's almost Hetty Fry-like now that he's been in so many elections there, and he's finally winning more than he lost. But yeah. And again, let's face it, if you were living that riding and you had to put up with Gurmont and then Ginny Sims, Suk Dhaliwal looked pretty damn good for a lot of elections to come.
Yeah, and if you're a Politico in BC, you probably know what I'm about to say, which is that Suk Dhaliwal is one of the most impressively organized politicians I've ever met, period, actually. I mean, he's got ground game like for days. It's again, you don't have to be a Liberal to admire it, and I know plenty of people on many sides of the spectrum who will point to him and saying, listen, organizationally, that is the gold standard, and he has been for a while.
Yeah, for some reason, remember he was going to run for the BC Liberals at one point provincially, and I forget what happened. There was something that knocked him out of it.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but you're right.
But that's a bigger loss to that party than you think, because he is the kind of person who could swing a couple of Surrey ridings, not just on his name, which is fine, but on that organizational prowess that he has. Look, Suk Dhaliwal is sort of the third shadowy figure with Kevin Falcon and Chris Gardner, the ones who kind of built a lot of the center-right apparatus in Surrey, especially municipally back in the 90s. So Suk will get a kick out of me lumping him with them. Okay, we should talk about 21 ridings where the CPC plus the PPC vote would have won, but did not.
Okay.
One of them, I'll give you an example, Skeena-Bulkley Valley. The PPC took 8 points, and Tory Claire Ratty lost by 6 to the NDP incumbent. Now, it's not always going to be perfect. Protest, blah, blah, blah. But 21 ridings...
I'd be interested. I want to kind of go through those numbers myself. I take your word.
You doubt Trevor Tombe? That's who I stole it from on Twitter.
Really? I am not a subscriber to the belief that every PPC voter is, a frustrated conservative voter. I'm sure a significant chunk of them are. I'm not whistling in the past a graveyard here, but I think that a significant chunk of those voters are people that just otherwise wouldn't vote or would vote for another perceived protest vote, including, ironically, the Greens. I don't think it's a coincidence that the People's Party vote went up and the Green Party vote went down. There's a lot of work that has to be done on sort of a polling poli-sci level, but I do not believe that it is anything close to a one-to-one correlation of a PPC vote is a conservative vote that disappeared. Now, that said, there will be a big element of that, but there's no question, you mentioned 21 ridings, there's no question that I'm sure a PPC candidate did prevent a conservative MP from their point of view.
Yeah, somewhere in there, there's a few, but it's just an interesting thing, and there'll be a lot of discussion on that going forward. Well, I have the provincial numbers, by the way, in case that's helpful. So the Liberals won 15 seats in BC. The Tories and NDP are heading 13. The Green won Elizabeth May's seat. But you got to marvel at the efficiency of the Liberal vote. Less than 27% of the vote in BC walk away with 36% of the seats, 15 seats. So they actually lost the vote to both the Conservatives and the NDP. Tories at 33.5, NDP at 29, Liberals at less than 27. But they walk away with the most seats thanks to basically being non-competitive in certain areas of the province.
You're right. The Liberals are built to win in the system we have. They are a mile wide and an inch thick is the old expression. That's where their support is. They're not concentrated in any one part of the country, with the exception of places where they're really strong, like Toronto and suburban Montreal.
Can I ask you why the Liberals never win on Vancouver Island?
That's a great question. I don't know. They used to.
Yeah.
David Anderson was a cabinet minister for years in Victoria. I think Vancouver Island has kind of become, the NDP's home turf. This is their deep, deep fortress. This and, downtown Vancouver. And it's also the Greens. This is the only place in the country where they're competitive, outside of a few sort of blips here and there across the country. So I think that's what it is. They've just been kind of crowded out.
Yeah. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to give you one more thing, and then we can talk about anything you want to talk about on this. But my last thing is, we heard a lot of the usual blather from commentators and reporters that, battleground BC was really going to matter this time. It was really going to matter. But Maclean, I would submit to you that our main contribution to this election was Shachi Kurl and her ability to single-handedly ensure a strong bloc showing and to basically set an entire province in Confederation on fire. Shachi should not go to Montreal anytime soon.
Yes, through no fault of her own. That was a legitimate question.
No, Maclean.
You don't think so? Oh, I disagree.
I don't like the wording of that question. I have the wording of the question. Sir, you deny that Quebec has problems with racism, yet you defend legislation such as Bills 96 and 21, which marginalize religious minorities, Anglophones, and Allophones. For those outside the province, please help them understand why your party also supports these discriminatory laws. Okay, look, we can talk about Bill 21 and 96. I get it, and for sure. But that is, it's a bit of a blow there. Like,
she didn't tap dance around it. You're right about that. But, it is a real thing. Yeah. And
Quebec, when did you stop beating your wife? like it's that kind of question, right? Like, it's the worst kind of thing. And you're a friggin' debate moderator, and okay, I like my moderators to sort of be out of the way of the thing. She very clearly became the story in Quebec. I'm reading
Well, I can't argue that she did become the story.
And at first I thought, it's just whatever the Quebec equivalent of rednecks are, who are upset about this, and they're going to take offense and stuff. But then you start reading professor of political science or ethics, and from major Quebec universities, laying out, the case for secularism, whatever, but laying out why this was a racist question. And I'm just gonna say, battleground BC was almost irrelevant to this election. Clearly, nothing really changed around here. Certainly nothing changed in the election, but Shachi Kurl, I guess, was our great contribution to the soon-to-be-forgotten 2021 election.
Well, I absolutely agree that Yves-François Blanchet would agree with you. He recognized that moment as the gift that it was. But I mean, and you in your when you were talking about it there, you called it a racist question. I don't think you meant that, but
Well,
right?
sorry, I meant it was a racism question. Like, I meant
Oh,
it was like,
okay, sorry, yes,
yeah,
I
you're right.
I misheard you.
Yeah, I don't mean a
Cheat your
racist
folks.
question. I mean, I may have said that, but I meant it's a racism question.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
unquestionably a racist question.
yeah. So if I said racist, I meant in the context of like racism question. Sorry, apologies
Gotcha.
for that. But they certainly took it as racist.
Yeah, well, yes, yeah, another humiliation. I mean, that's what Jacques Parizeau always used to say is that give him 3 angry Ontarians and a lighter and a Quebec flag, and he'll have Quebec voting to separate tomorrow. That's a real quote. It's always about finding the rest of Canada humiliating Quebec. That always plays there, and so. It wasn't hard to take Shachi's question and frame it as another humiliation, and so here we are.
Yeah. Anything I missed that caught your eye that you want to?
Well, we talked about actually, yeah. There is one thing I want to talk about. One thing in Aaron O'Toole's speech, and that is, well, just the tone of it. Really, it sounded like. Well, first of all, it did not sound like a concession speech. It sounded more like he won. And it also sounded very, I believe him, by the way, that I think we're going to be doing this again very, very soon. And it sort of made sense to sound like they're in sort of permanent in battle ready mode because, you have to be in a minority government.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny to see some people online saying, how dare he act like it's, we're going right into another election. We've been told throughout the entire campaign that the reason we just had a campaign was because minority governments are unstable. And they wanted the stability of a majority government. So, to acknowledge that and play off of it in the speech at the end of it seemed normal to me. But there obviously some people were very upset by it.
Yes. Well, he was very much in that Ken Busencool messaging box where it was like, Trudeau wanted a majority, we prevented the majority, therefore we won because Trudeau lost. Okay, yeah, I would agree. Trudeau won the majority. He didn't get it, so Trudeau did lose that opportunity, and it'll be interesting to see the dynamics within his own caucus. But you didn't win either, right? Like,
yeah,
everybody kind of lost.
Kind of like the Americans declaring the War of 1812 a win.
Yes,
no.
Yes. How's that White House doing?
That's not what happened.
I do think I think CERB relief has to be taken away. COVID relief is going to be slowly taken away. I think there's some economic chickens that are going to come home to roost. I think that's going to be very bad for the Liberals unless they change their crazy spending ways. I don't know how they can when they're relying on the NDP to prop up budgets. If anything, it's going to be like, why stop at childcare? Let's do pharmacare. Let's do it twice. It's going to be that kind of thing. There's this thing in politics in Canada, in British Columbia we're experiencing as well, where the pendulum swings to one side of the spectrum and you're like, well, this is the new permanent forever. This is it. People are throwing off the shackles of free enterprise and they want, John Horgan's cozy brand of premier dad socialism for the rest of our generations, and we've lost the kids and blah, 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 we'll never go back. Well, eventually. The funny thing is, John Horgan was one of those people who at one point worried that, they've gone to the hardcore fiscal responsibility of the BC Liberals,
right.
and oh my God, we'll never get back. These things go back and forth. Right now you're hearing a lot of, there's a permanent, Liberal majority and blah. Well, they got 30% of the vote.
Yeah.
And, they're not growing anymore. The shine's come off Trudeau in a lot of ways. There's fiscal issues that are going to trip things up. Inflation's a bigger deal. I kind of noticed it on my grocery bill this week, and those things start to add up over time. Like, why is, $40 more for groceries this week and I didn't buy anything out of the ordinary? So why is that? Well, inflation and, you're starting to see that kind of percolate. I don't subscribe to this fact that we're some sort of forever liberal country, partly because, for God's sake, Stephen Harper was 7 years ago. It's not a generation ago. It's not that long ago.
True.
Not your grandfather's conservative party. Okay, not your father's conservative party. Well, it's not my conservative party. It was 7 years ago. Come on.
Yeah. I had this conversation with somebody who's very smart over text last night, and she was saying, well, this is the conservative peak. This is as high as they can go. And I was like, well, why would you say that? Because just the point you just made. I mean, we're just a couple years removed from a conservative majority. It's not that long ago. And, all it's going to take is exactly right. I mean, Canada sort of seizing on some issue that's getting worse under the Trudeau government. And I think actually inflation in groceries is a really good one. It's the kind of thing that somebody's going to seize on because it affects literally everybody.
Yeah.
And it's going to take, if Toronto changes its mind even for one election, that's it right there. That's the ball game.
Yeah, exactly. And, businesses aren't going to be able to keep up with the rate of inflation for wage increases for staff. So if the inflation rate is 4 or 5%, businesses can't afford to do that. And the funny thing is, if they do try to match that, then they have to increase their prices, which then pushes up inflation. So you get stuck in this weird cycle. Mm-hmm. Government contracts will be fine because they're government. And that will, again, create this kind of two classes of citizens, one that work for government, one that pays for government. That's never good. But you're right. Like, eventually, light will pierce the darkness of the red wall around Toronto. And, these things happen. So what I would say about Aaron O'Toole is this. If he's going to stay on, or whoever is leading the Conservative Party, has got to get back to pocketbook affordability issues and, putting together plans that make sense to Canadians. We talk a lot about climate change. The O'Toole climate change carbon tax replacement, it was just so stupid. By the time the next election comes around, this thing's been baked in the provinces for a long period of time. Just be like, we're not going to monkey with it, whatever. It's up to the provinces to deal with. And, I would actually move their focus on climate change to mitigation. Look, we're trying our best to reduce greenhouse gas emissions with these carbon taxes. It's going slower than expected because the Liberals have mismanaged it. Even if we get down to zero, China, India, America are still going to, pollute us out. Therefore, we're going to put more money than ever before into building dikes, into like the really tangible stuff, air conditioners, like we got to keep people alive. Like, go to mitigation. Like, hey, that makes kind of sense, right? And you still have a climate change policy, but you basically say, we recognize where we actually stand in the world, which is, we need to protect our citizens more than, exactly. Taking 3 buckets of water out of a swimming pool does not substantially lower the amount of water in that pool. But you've got to figure out ways to kind of, encourage. I think that would I quit messing around with guns. Like, the old Dr. Phil axiom comes to me: do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? Yeah. Like, do you want to be in power or do you want to be right? I kind of like to be in power. Then you can get to be right later on, right? Like, come on, just
No, I couldn't agree more. Your average Canadian doesn't want anything to do with guns, doesn't want their neighbor to have anything to do with guns. And so talking about it even in sort of an esoteric, well, actually, it's this and this, I think you've already lost.
Yeah, exactly. When you're explaining, you're losing. And, well, you don't understand. That legislation was so flawed because there's this loophole and that loophole and that loophole and that loophole and that loophole. Yeah, but kept that one gun off. So even if it, who cares? So, okay, improve gun laws later, I guess. I don't know. But these elections are roller coasters. I thought there was a glimmer of hope for Aaron O'Toole at one point. But
2 weeks ago, things looked good from his point of view. I thought there was a real chance things could change, and then it just didn't go well the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I do think that Trudeau has diminished himself greatly. I think he hurt Krista Freeland, who's the heir apparent there as well, with that stupid, misleading media claim. I mean, that's the kind of tag Twitter puts on Donald Trump tweets, not on Krista Freeland tweets.
And then she was silent for the rest of the campaign.
Yeah, apparently she went local. She was door knocking for local candidates and things like that. But there was none of that sense of like, I'm the grown up in the room when it comes to spending. Just the opposite. She seems as as wild as he does. So we'll see. You should shout out to Hannah Hodgson as well, because she made history even though she didn't win.
The Conservatives' first transgender candidate in Victoria. I haven't seen the finals. I believe she finished a respectable third.
Yeah, she got about 10% of the vote.
Yeah, which, I mean, she made history. So being on the ballot, I don't think she would agree with this, but being on the ballot is a bit of a win in and of itself. And so, good for her. She put her name, she stood up.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You have a hard stop in about a little less than 15 minutes, and we haven't talked about anything other than the federal election, so we should probably skip right to our weekly segment of Jordan Tells Us What's Going On Behind the Scenes in the BC Liberal leadership race. And I know there's been some developments.
Well, I've had chats with a couple of folks. So first of all, let's talk about Aaron Gunn. I've not had a chat with Gunner, but Aaron Gunn still floating out there on Instagram that he's still kicking tires. I believe now he will come into the race in a couple of weeks.
Really?
I believe he will attempt the great social media takeover of the BC Liberal Party. Can he convert a following of whatever he has, 100, 150,000 people on social media channels into
paid memberships and
6,000 paid memberships that vote? Then he would be the next leader of the BC Liberal Party. So, that is going to be interesting to see because none of us have ever seen this attempted in Canada. So I'm very curious as to how this strategy will work, but we shall see.
It is a grand experiment, if nothing else.
Yes, exactly. So that's the Aaron Gunn news. On Falcon and Kevin Falcon was at a dinner with him last week, and when your band plays your favorite songs. You go see Paul McCartney. Not that Falcon's old, but you go to the concert and U2 starts with Where the Streets Have No Name, and you're like, yes, this is it. Shut up with the new album. This is what I want. It felt a little bit like that for me with Falcon. Like, yeah, play those hits, Kev. Like, yeah, Canada Line. The Mayors didn't want it. We built it. Things like that. It kind of stirred up the old. Those old feelings, Kevin Falcon in the Global TV helicopter flying over the Port Mann Bridge, talking about how great, yes, let's do this, fortunately the NDP keep giving him plenty of content, like the Massey Tunnel debacle, blah, blah, blah. But, what I would say about Kevin is he did a good job of, focusing, his remarks were a little bit about policy and a little bit about history, but really about the state of the party today and how to rebuild it. He's clearly putting a lot of thought and energy into it. And one thing I would say about Kevin is that he has the ability, if he wins, he would have the ability to go to candidates and recruit them and say, look, no one here has given up more than I have, right? Like, I had a great paying job. I don't know he's getting an anthem, but, it's very, 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 very comfortable.
I'm sure you're doing okay.
I have young daughters, but he's put this all aside because he really believes in this vision, he believes in the party, he believes in the philosophy, and he believes in British Columbia. So that's kind of a powerful recruiting tool, right? Like, I've tried to recruit candidates for things that I myself aren't running for, and you feel a little bit like a damn hypocrite when you do it because you're like, no, I want you to do this, but no, I couldn't possibly. So I do think that is an advantage that I hadn't really considered until I heard more about his reasons for running in this one. So, still a little bit rusty on a few little things, and he's getting it back up in gear. But I think that was good. Gavin dropped by the office. Gavin Dew dropped by ICBA's office yesterday. We did an interview with him on our ICBA social media channel, so you can seek that out if you like. Gavin's just he's pushing this party to engage people in different ways. He's doing it smartly. There's a lot of Gavin's the young guy in the race. Gavin's the smart guy in the race. He's very intelligent.
That is going on Gavin's mailers, by the way.
Yes,
I think
Gavin's the smart guy in the
there.
race. Yeah. He's very well read, very intelligent. He knows the history of the party, but he also knows, the generation that we've got to reach out to in order to form government. So that was a great conversation, and like I said, you can see it on our ICBA YouTube channel and Facebook and all over the interwebs. And if other candidates are watching and are like, why don't I get an interview with Jordan? Just send me an email. Don't Facebook message me. I hate that. I don't reply to Facebook messages. Just email me, jordan@icba.ca. We'll set up an interview with your candidate. I'm happy to do it. So that, I think, is all I have to report. Oh, except that debate next week. And I think you and I are going to do a post-game show. Are we still planning?
We are. That snuck up. I was so focused on the federal election that I almost completely... It's next Tuesday? A week today, isn't it?
That is. And Gavin was telling me he's doing his debate prep. And so he's gone back and watched the ones from the previous leadership race and the one before that. And he said it's shocking. 2011, you almost have to throw it out because the person who won that was going to be the premier of British Columbia. So it was all policy.
Completely different.
Yeah, it was, how are we going to rebuild, how are we going to turn the corner after HST and do stuff. 2018 or 2018, whenever the one with Andrew
17.
Wilkinson.
18.
Still had a lot of that policy overhang. Well, if I were premier, I would do this. And it was, frankly, because the BC Liberals were still in denial about their situation.
Yeah.
But also because they had more seats and more votes than the NDP, and everyone thought the NDP Green Alliance would crack at some point. And
Well, it did.
It did, yes. I don't know if it cracked so much as it was knifed to death in the back by John Horgan, but
That's
whatever, same thing. As, Andrew Weaver held the corpse. But, whatever, that's fine. Sonia's doing great. She's got 2 seats. She may get 2 next time, too. It'll be great. I know you guys love her on Capital Direct, but I'm a little more realistic with Green Party chances. Anyways, this debate, I'm a BC Liberal member. I have a vote. I'm undecided. I'm certainly undecided down ballot as well. I want to hear from you, leader candidates. How are you going to rebuild the party? How are you going to redefine BC Liberal values and interpret them for the rest of the younger generations? What does free enterprise mean to a 20-year-old? How do we redefine? That is what I want to hear. How are you going to rebuild the party? How are you going to get the right people to run? Because I don't really care what your 3-point plan is on education. Like, great, I'm glad you have one. I'm sure you've thought lots about it. How are you going to rebuild the party? Because nothing else matters at this point. So do me a favor and debate that.
I'm curious to see what the tone is going to be like, how nice they're all going to be to each other. It's, it's not going to be a knockdown, drag out, televised leaders debate like in an election. It won't, at least I don't think. But it also probably won't be, isn't everyone up on stage great? I think there'll be a few, well, I really disagree with you on this. Yeah. And I'm fascinated to see who goes there. Now, I'm not saying I'm hoping it's mean or nasty. It'll be very interesting to see where the contrasts are. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. Well, I suspect 5 of them will be very nice to each other. And if there's going to be one outlier, he's the front runner. And I think those 5 will probably hold Kevin to a different kind of account than maybe they're holding each other. So we'll see.
And fair enough. I mean, if he is the front runner, that's what comes with the territory. But yeah, we'll see. It'll be a fascinating watch.
Yes, and so catch our post game show. I'm sure Maclean will post details on New York and stuff. Follow me on Twitter, Jordan Bateman, no underscore.
Shade thrown at the mothership. I know you have a hard stop. I don't want to keep you late for your meeting. Until next week, are we going to do a regular show before, or should we just wait until after the debate?
Let's just wait unless something important happens.
Okay, you never know. This could be nothing of importance happened this coming week. Hey, I bookended the show with the same joke. You'd almost like I planned it, and I didn't. Until next week, he's Jordan Bateman. I'm Maclean K. Happy politics.